Grace, Space, and Disgrace, the true story of a Jaguar dream turned financial nightmare. Alex, a lifelong car enthusiast whose formative years were spent with posters of automotive legends plastered across his bedroom walls, one shape stood out above all others: the Jaguar E-Type. It was more than a car. It was a national icon, a rolling sculpture of such perfect proportion that even Enzo Ferrari had reportedly called it the most beautiful car ever made. That dream, however, remained firmly in the realm of fantasy, its price tag soaring into the stratosphere, far beyond the reach of a man with a steady job and a mortal's mortgage. But dreams have a way of finding new forms, of echoing through the decades. For Alex, that echo was the Jaguar XK8. When the XK8, codenamed X100, was unveiled at the 1996 Geneva Motor Show, it was nothing short of a sensation. It was the first all-new sporting Jaguar since the controversial XJS of 1975, and it was the car that Jaguar desperately needed. The company, recently acquired by Ford, had been navigating a period of economic strife amidst a global recession. The XK8 was its savior, a car that seemed to answer the prayers of enthusiasts who had been waiting for a true spiritual successor to the E-Type. Its design was a masterful blend of retro and modern, clearly aping the long bonnet and sensual haunches of its famous ancestor while incorporating the technology and comforts of a contemporary Grand Tourer. It was sleek, purposeful, and quintessentially British. The interior was a cocoon of Connolly leather, Wilton wool carpets, and more burr walnut on the dashboard than any Jaguar before it, a deliberate evocation of an old-world sense of comfort. This was the car that made Jaguar cool again, a vehicle that possessed the grace and pace Sir William Lyons had always championed. An attainable classic, the passage of time performs a curious alchemy on luxury cars. The very thing that made the XK8 so desirable when new, its status as a world-class Grand Tourer with a price tag to match, approaching $75,000 for a convertible in the US and near £200,000 in some markets for special editions, became the engine of its future accessibility. 2 decades of depreciation had worked their magic, transforming the XK8 into what many considered the GT car deal of the century. Suddenly, a machine that compared favorably with the Aston Martin DB7 was appearing in classified advertisements for the price of a mundane family hatchback. Prices for early 2000s models with reasonable mileage hovered between £6,000 and £10,000, with older, higher mileage examples dipping as low as £3,500. This dramatic drop in value created a dangerous paradox. The car still possessed the soul of a high-performance luxury vehicle, with all the associated running costs and potential for complex, expensive repairs, but its low entry price made it dangerously tempting to a new class of buyer. The market became populated by what one commentator bluntly described as pretenders without money for repairs, who buy the car second-hand, lose control of the costs, and pass it on, creating a lineage of neglect. A buyer was not just acquiring a car, they were buying into the intoxicating narrative of getting a £50,000 vehicle for £5,000. This powerful psychological pull, the allure of the impossible bargain, can foster a kind of confirmation bias, where a buyer, so captivated by the dream, actively overlooks the warning signs of a potential nightmare. They want the car to be good, and this desire can eclipse the rational need for due diligence. It is in this fertile ground of desire and depreciation that the seeds of disaster are sown. The find it was on a grey Tuesday evening, scrolling through an online marketplace, that Alex found it. The advert was for a 1999 Jaguar XK8 4.0-litre convertible. The color was perfect, a deep, lustrous British racing green. The interior was a swathe of soft, inviting cashmere leather. The pictures showed the car gleaming under a summer sun, its lines uninterrupted, its presence undeniable. The advert's text was just as seductive. It boasted of low mileage for its age, just under 80,000 miles, and, crucially, a full service history. The price was £6,000, a figure that seemed entirely reasonable, landing squarely within the expected market range for a seemingly well-kept example. The description painted a picture of a cherished, high days and holidays car, used sparingly and maintained fastidiously. For Alex, it was the ghost of the E-Type, finally within his grasp. He arranged a viewing for the upcoming weekend, his heart already half lost to the promise of those photographs. The private sale, the viewing and test drive, the seller was a man in his late 50s, charismatic and reassuring. He spoke of the car with the fond familiarity of a long-term owner, sharing anecdotes of sunny drives and admiring glances. The Jaguar, in person, was even more captivating than in the photos. The paintwork held a deep gloss, and the walnut dashboard, with its sea of soft hide, was as inviting as a gentleman's club library. Alex slid into the driver's seat, the Connolly leather sighing under his weight. The key turned, and the all-new, Jaguar-designed 4.0-litre AJ-V6 engine, the first V8 in the company's history, rumbled to life with a sophisticated growl. On the road, the car felt magnificent. It was a grand tourer in the truest sense, comfortable and composed, the engine delivering its 290 horsepower with a smooth, linear surge. The automatic transmission shifted seamlessly. Alex was smitten. The dream was real, tangible, and exhilarating. Yet, in the intoxicating fog of the moment, he failed to properly register the subtle dissonances, the quiet warnings that the car was trying to give him. At around 60 miles per hour, he felt a slight, intermittent shake through the steering column, a vibration he dismissed as a quirk of an older car on an imperfect road. It was, in fact, a well-documented issue with the XK8, often pointing to worn front suspension components. Later, turning onto a side street, the front right wheel dropped into a pothole, and he heard a distinct, dull clunk from the rear. Again, he rationalized it away. It was, in fact, another classic symptom of worn suspension bushes, a common ailment for these heavy cars. The emotional high of the experience was overriding the analytical part of his brain. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. What Alex was stepping into was not just a car, but a legal landscape heavily tilted against him. A private sale in the United Kingdom operates under the principle of caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Unlike purchasing from a licensed dealership, where the Consumer Rights Act 2015 provides robust protections requiring a vehicle to be of satisfactory quality, fit for purpose, and as described, a private sale offers minimal recourse. The private seller's primary legal obligation is simply to describe the car accurately in the advert and not to misrepresent it. They are under no legal duty to disclose known faults. If the engine is on its last legs or the floor is rusted through, the seller does not have to mention it unless specifically asked. The responsibility for a thorough inspection falls entirely on the buyer's shoulders. This legal framework makes the private market a minefield for the unwary, a place where a charming smile and a plausible story can easily conceal a mountain of expensive problems. The handshake and the cash back at the seller's house, Alex's mind was made up. The seller, sensing the sale was close, offered a final piece of reassurance, tapping a folder of paperwork. It's just had a fresh MOT and a service, just like it says in the ad. She's a good one. This statement, seemingly innocuous, was a crucial piece of misrepresentation that would only become apparent in hindsight. A price of £5,800 was agreed upon. Alex, eager to seal the deal, transferred the money from his banking app directly into the seller's account. He received a simple, handwritten receipt stating the car was sold as seen, a phrase that holds little legal weight but serves as a powerful psychological deterrent to future complaints. Critically, in his haste and excitement, Alex made the single most significant mistake of the entire transaction. He did not perform a vehicle history check. A service like HPI, Hire Purchase Investigation, would have cost less than £20, but in that moment, it seemed like an unnecessary formality. He had the V5C logbook, a sheaf of service receipts, and the seller's word. It felt like enough. He drove away in his dream car, the burble of the V8 a soundtrack to his triumph. He did not know that the seller's phone would be disconnected by the following week, a classic move by a fraudulent seller vanishing after the sale. He did not know that the foundation of his dream was built on a bedrock of rust, mechanical decay, and a devastating legal lie. The unraveling the catalogue of catastrophe. The honeymoon period lasted precisely 4 days. The initial euphoria of ownership, the thrill of turning heads and the pride of seeing the Jaguar's elegant form parked on his driveway, quickly began to curdle into a state of gnawing anxiety. The car that had seemed so perfect during the test drive began to reveal its true, deeply flawed character, not with a single dramatic failure, but through a creeping barrage of symptoms, each one a harbinger of financial pain. First symptom, the rattle of doom. It began on a cool morning. When Alex turned the key, the engine fired up as usual, but for the first 2 or 3 seconds, a new sound joined the V8's purr. It was a harsh, sharp, metallic rattle, a noise that forum users on piston heads and Jag lovers vividly describe as sounding like a bicycle chain dragging on the chain guard. The sound vanished as quickly as it appeared, but it left Alex with a cold knot in his stomach. A frantic evening of online research confirmed his fears. This was the infamous death rattle of failing timing chain tensioners, arguably the most notorious Achilles heel of the 4.0-litre AJV8 engine. The technical reality was terrifying. Jaguar, in the original AJ26 engines, had used tensioners with a plastic body. The first generation, MK1, design was actuated by engine oil pressure. On a cold start, before the pressure built up, a failing tensioner would allow the timing chain to go slack, creating the signature rattle. The second generation, MK2, plastic tensioners were spring-loaded, meaning they often failed silently, giving no warning before disaster struck. If a tensioner failed completely, the chain could jump a tooth on the camshaft sprocket. One slipped tooth would result in a rough-running engine. Two slipped teeth would cause a catastrophic collision between the valves and pistons, effectively destroying the engine. Alex's 1999 model was in the epicenter of the danger zone. The only permanent fix was to upgrade to the third generation, MK3, metal-bodied tensioners from the later 4.2-litre engine. A preventative upgrade of the secondary tensioners was a manageable, if fiddly, job. However, if the primary chains and guides were also worn, a full replacement by a specialist could cost anywhere from £700 to over £2,500. The dream car was threatening to become a ticking time bomb. Second symptom, the green shower. A week later, the first properly warm day of spring arrived. It was the moment Alex had been fantasizing about, top-down motoring in his British racing green convertible. He pulled the handle to release the header rail latch. The windows dropped slightly, as they should. He pressed the button to retract the roof. The pump whirred for a second, then stopped. He tried again. This time, he saw it. A single, viscous drop of emerald green fluid appeared on the edge of the windscreen header rail, followed by another, and then a slow, steady drip directly onto the pristine cashmere leather of the passenger seat. He had just experienced the green shower, a rite of passage so common among X100 convertible owners that it has its own ominous nickname in the Jaguar community. The hydraulic system that operates the roof is complex and fragile. The hydraulic fluid, a specific type known as CHF11S, can congeal over time if not flushed and replaced every 5 or 6 years, blocking the delicate pipework. More commonly, the original hydraulic hoses become brittle and burst under pressure. The repair is notoriously difficult and expensive. A new hydraulic pump assembly from Jaguar could run into 4 figures, while even a reconditioned unit costs upwards of £500, plus hours of specialist labor to install. The stain on the leather was more than just a mark, it was a symbol of a new, deepening crisis. Third symptom, the unseen rot. As Alex frantically tried to clean the sticky green hydraulic fluid from the seat, he pressed down hard on the carpet in the passenger footwell. He felt a damp, squelching sensation. With a growing sense of dread, he pulled back the thick, woolen mat. The underlay was saturated. He peeled it away from the floor to reveal a horrifying sight. The metal of the floor pan was not smooth and painted, but a blistered, flaking landscape of advanced corrosion. This was another of the X100's well-documented and insidious flaws. During manufacture, a steel reinforcing plate was fitted underneath each front footwell. This plate had a fatal tendency to trap water and road salt against the floor, allowing rust to take hold and eat its way through the metal from the outside in, completely hidden from view by the carpets and under seal. By the time a driver noticed damp carpets, the damage was already severe. Further inspection revealed the cancer had spread. The sills, particularly at the front where a plastic cover traps dirt, were bubbling, and the rear wheel arches showed the telltale signs of decay. This was not surface rust. It was structural rot. Rectifying it would be a major undertaking, involving stripping the entire interior, cutting out the rotten metal, and welding in new repair panels, a time-consuming and costly job that would easily run into thousands of pounds. Fourth symptom, the dashboard Christmas tree. The car's electronic systems now decided to join the symphony of failure. One morning, the message, ASC not available, flashed up on the instrument cluster, accompanied by an amber warning light. The next day, the ABS light came on and stayed on. Then came the most dreaded light of all, the check engine light, glowing with malevolent intent. The dashboard had become a Christmas tree of warnings, each one a new source of anxiety. The intermittent ABS, ASC fault, he learned from online forums, was often caused by nothing more than a pair of failed solder joints inside the ABS control module, a simple fix for someone with a soldering iron, but a bill of over £400 for a replacement module from a garage. The check engine light was a Pandora's box of possibilities. It could be a relatively benign faulty oxygen sensor, or it could be the car's engine control unit, ECU, screaming about the failing timing chain tensioners. Compounding the confusion is the X100's known sensitivity to battery voltage. A slightly weak or aging battery can cause the car to throw a cascade of spurious and random error messages on startup, sending an owner on a wild goose chase for faults that don't actually exist. Fifth symptom, the shakes and rattles. The subtle issues from the test drive now graduated to persistent, undeniable faults. The steering column shake became more pronounced. A constant shimmy felt through the steering wheel at motorway speeds. The single clunk from the rear over a pothole evolved into a continuous, clattery rattle every time the car traversed an uneven surface. The car felt loose, disjointed, and profoundly unwell. The diagnosis was grim but predictable. These cars are notoriously hard on their suspension components. The steering shake was likely caused by perished front suspension bushes. The original foam upper strut mountings were known to disintegrate, and the control arm bushes wear out, leading to incorrect suspension geometry. The rattle from the rear was the classic sound of worn-out lower damper mounting bushes. The cumulative effect of this wear was not just a poor ride, but another hidden expense: rapid and uneven tire wear, particularly on the inside edges, as the wheels were no longer correctly aligned. Alex was beginning to understand that on a car like this, every single fault had a financial consequence. Common XK8 fault summary: timing chain tensioners, plastic, affected models, 4.0-liter V8, AJ26/27, pre-August 2001. Symptoms: rattle on cold start, MK1, silent failure, MK2, rough running, check engine, light. Consequence of failure: catastrophic engine failure, piston, valve collision. Est. UK repair cost, £700 to £2,500 plus. Nicosol bore liners, affected models, 4.0-liter V8, AJ26, pre-2000. Symptoms: poor starting, lumpy idle, excessive oil consumption, high crankcase pressure. Consequence of failure: loss of compression, requiring engine replacement. Est. UK repair cost, £5,000 plus. Convertible hood hydraulics, affected models, all convertibles. Symptoms: green shower, leaking fluid, slow or non-operational roof, pump whirring with no movement. Consequence of failure: damaged interior from fluid, inoperable roof. Est. UK repair cost, £400 to £1,500 plus. Floor pan, sill corrosion, affected models, all, especially pre-2003. Symptoms: damp carpets, visible rust on sills, arches, MOT failure on structural points. Consequence of failure: structural integrity compromised, major welding required. Est. UK repair cost, £500 to £3,000 plus, depending on severity. Sealed for life, transmission, ZF5 HP24, affected models, all 4.0-liter XK8. Symptoms: jerky, slipping gear shifts, hesitation on takeoff, gearbox fault, warning, limp home mode. Consequence of failure: complete gearbox failure requiring rebuild or replacement. Est. UK repair cost, £1,500 to £3,000 for rebuild. The money pit. The specialist's verdict. Armed with his grim list of symptoms, Alex booked the car into a highly recommended independent Jaguar specialist, the kind of small, dedicated workshop that becomes a lifeline for owners abandoned by main dealers. The mechanic, a man who had seen hundreds of these cars, gave a weary sigh as Alex recounted the litany of problems. An hour on the workshop lift was all it took to confirm every one of Alex's fears. The report was damning. The timing chain tensioners were original MK1s and on the verge of collapse. The convertible roof required a full set of new hydraulic hoses and a pump flush. The floor pans needed to be cut out and replaced on both sides. The ABS module had the classic internal fault. The front and rear suspension was riddled with worn bushes and ball joints. The mechanic drew up a rough estimate for the work. The total, including parts and labor, came to just over £8,000. It was a sum that far exceeded what Alex had paid for the car, and likely more than the car would be worth even in perfect condition. The average annual repair cost for a Jaguar is already high at over £1,100, but this was a different order of magnitude entirely. The emotional toll. The drive home was silent. The joy and pride Alex had felt just a few weeks earlier had been replaced by a toxic cocktail of emotions: crushing disappointment, acute embarrassment, and a rising tide of financial panic. The dream car had morphed into a money pit, a term used frequently by seasoned owners to warn novices. It was a beautiful, expensive paperweight parked on his drive. He felt trapped. He had sunk his savings into an asset that was simultaneously worthless and yet demanded thousands more to be made roadworthy. The stress was immense. Every glance at the car was a reminder of his folly, a monument to a dream that had soured into a waking nightmare. The seller is gone. As a final, desperate measure, Alex tried to contact the seller. The phone number he had saved now went straight to a "number not recognized" message. The online advert he had bookmarked had been deleted, as is standard practice on many platforms after a sale is completed or the listing expires. The charming, reassuring man who had sold him the car had vanished without a trace, a ghost in the digital machine. Alex was utterly alone with his problem, a classic victim of a fraudulent private sale where the seller disappears, leaving the buyer to deal with the fallout. The mechanical and financial crisis was his and his alone. Or so he thought. The worst was yet to come. The knockout blow: the letter in the mail, the official envelope a few weeks after the specialist's devastating diagnosis. As Alex was still grappling with the sheer scale of his predicament, the postman delivered what would be the final, knockout blow. It was a crisp, white envelope bearing the logo of a prominent national finance company. Assuming it was just another piece of unsolicited junk mail offering a loan, he tossed it onto the kitchen counter, intending to shred it later. It sat there for 2 days, an innocuous piece of paper containing a life-altering secret. The shocking content: it was only by chance that he opened it. The letter was formal, polite, and utterly terrifying. It was addressed not to him, but to the previous owner, yet it had been sent to Alex's address. It referenced a hire purchase, HP, agreement, identifying the vehicle in question by its full VIN and registration number, his Jaguar XK8. The letter stated that the account was in arrears, as the monthly payments had ceased. It went on to state, in cold, unambiguous legal language, that the vehicle remained the legal property of the finance company until the agreement was settled in full. It concluded by noting that they reserved the right to take all necessary steps to recover their asset, including repossession. The double jeopardy: the words swam before Alex's eyes. The ground, already unstable, had just given way completely. This was a catastrophe on an entirely new level. It wasn't just that he had bought a car with a mountain of mechanical and structural problems. It was that he hadn't bought the car at all. He had, in effect, paid nearly £6,000 for the privilege of storing a finance company's broken-down asset on his driveway. He was facing the ultimate nightmare scenario for any used car buyer: the prospect of losing both the car and the money he had paid for it. The seller hadn't just misrepresented the car's condition. He had sold something that it was illegal for him to sell, as he was not the legal owner. Alex was now caught in a devastating double jeopardy, trapped between a mechanical money pit and a legal abyss. Navigating the legal maze, the HPI check that never was in a state of pure panic, Alex did what he should have done weeks earlier. He went online and paid for a full vehicle history check from HPI. The report came back in seconds, and there it was, in black and white: outstanding finance agreement detected. The report confirmed the name of the finance company and the date the agreement was taken out. It was a stark, digital confirmation of his ruin. This section of the report is critical for any potential buyer to understand. An HPI check is not a mere formality, it is an essential piece of due diligence. For a small fee, these services cross-reference a vehicle's details against a host of critical databases. They reveal not only outstanding finance agreements like HP or personal contract purchase, PCP, but also whether a car has been reported stolen, if it has been declared an insurance write-off, any discrepancies in its mileage history, the number of previous keepers, and if its number plates have been changed. 1 in every 3 cars checked reveals a hidden history, making this simple check a powerful shield against fraud. For Alex, the £20 he had saved by skipping this step was about to cost him thousands. The good title, Lifeline. Frantically searching for answers, Alex stumbled upon the website of the Citizens Advice Bureau, a beacon of clarity in his sea of confusion. It was there that he first encountered a legal concept that offered a sliver of hope: good title. He learned that under the UK's Hire Purchase Act 1964, there are specific protections for an innocent person who buys a vehicle that is subject to an undisclosed finance agreement. This subsection provides an authoritative breakdown of this crucial legal protection. The law recognizes that a private individual, buying in good faith, cannot be expected to bear the loss for a seller's fraudulent actions. To successfully claim good title and become the legal owner of the vehicle, an individual like Alex must meet a strict set of criteria. They must be a private purchaser. This means they are not a motor trader or a business buying the car for commercial purposes. Alex, buying the car for his personal use, met this condition. They must have bought the car in good faith. This means they acted honestly and had no reason to suspect there was anything wrong with the sale. They must have been unaware of the outstanding finance agreement. This is the most critical point. The buyer must have had no knowledge, actual or constructive, of the finance. Alex's failure to perform an HPI check could have weakened his position, but it is not in itself a deal breaker if he can prove his ignorance was genuine. They must be the first private purchaser from the debtor. The protection applies only to the first innocent person to buy the car from the individual who has the finance agreement. The burden of proof: the law offered a potential escape route, but the path was far from easy. While the legal burden of proof is technically on the finance company to demonstrate that a buyer does not have good title, the practical reality is that the buyer must proactively and convincingly make their case. The finance company's primary interest is its asset. They will not simply walk away without a fight. Alex realized he needed to build a fortress of evidence to defend his position. He had to prove his innocence and good faith. This meant gathering every scrap of information related to the purchase: the saved screenshots of the original advert promising a clean sale, the full transcript of his text message conversations with the seller, the flimsy handwritten receipt, and the bank statement showing the transfer of funds. He needed to document his attempts to contact the seller after the problems arose, showing that the seller had disappeared. Every piece of this paper trail was now a vital weapon in the legal battle that lay ahead. Steps for dealing with undisclosed finance: 1. The discovery. This is when a finance company contacts you, or a history check reveals an active finance agreement. The key evidence is the letter from the finance company or the HPI report. 2. Understand good title. Do not panic. Immediately research your rights under the Hire Purchase Act 1964. You may have legal ownership if you are the first innocent, private purchaser who bought in good faith without knowledge of the finance. Your status as a private individual is the key evidence here. 3. Immediate actions. Do not ignore communications. Document everything. Try to contact the seller to establish a record of their non-response or denial. Gather all evidence related to the sale. This includes copies of all letters, emails, phone logs, the original advert, messages with the seller, the receipt, and proof of payment. 4. Communicate with the finance company. Formally write to the finance company, email or recorded letter. State clearly that you are an innocent purchaser, bought the car in good faith, and were unaware of their interest. State that you believe you have acquired good title to the vehicle. Your key evidence will be a formal letter of response, attaching copies of all your other evidence. 5. Potential outcomes. Best case: the finance company accepts your claim, removes its financial marker from the car, and pursues the original debtor for the outstanding money. You keep the car. The key evidence is written confirmation from the finance company that their interest is removed. Disputed case: the company rejects your claim. You must escalate through their official internal complaints procedure. You must remain cooperative and provide any further information they request. The key evidence is a record of all complaint correspondence. Worst case: if you cannot prove good title, the finance company can legally repossess the car. Your only recourse is to take the original seller to court to recover your money, a difficult, often impossible, task if they have disappeared. The key evidence would be court documents and legal correspondence. 6. Final escalation: if the finance company's final decision is against you, and you still believe you have a valid claim, you can take your case, free of charge, to the Financial Ombudsman Service for an independent review. The key evidence will be all previous evidence and correspondence submitted to the Ombudsman. The reckoning, the fight for title, the dialogue, the weeks that followed were a masterclass in stress and bureaucracy. Alex initiated a formal dialogue with the finance company's collections department, a process that felt less like a conversation and more like a slow, grinding legal war of attrition. Following the steps he had learned from citizens' advice, he drafted a meticulous letter, sent via recorded delivery. He laid out the entire timeline of the purchase, emphasizing his status as an innocent private buyer who had acted in good faith. He attached copies of every piece of evidence he had: the screenshots of the advert, the text messages, the bank transfer record, and the specialist's report detailing the car's poor condition, which further supported the argument that he would never have paid such a price had he known the full truth. The initial responses from the finance company were formulaic and intimidating. They acknowledged his correspondence but reiterated their legal claim to the vehicle, requesting further information and signed declarations. Each letter was a source of fresh anxiety, a reminder that his ownership of the car hung by a thread. He responded to every request promptly and methodically, building his case piece by piece, living in fear of a knock on the door from a repossession agent. The waiting game. The process dragged on for nearly 2 months. It was a period of profound psychological strain. The Jaguar sat on his drive, a constant, silent rebuke. He couldn't drive it, he couldn't fix it, and he couldn't sell it. It was a car in legal and mechanical limbo. The fear of repossession was constant. Every unfamiliar van that pulled up on his street sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. The dream of open-top motoring had been replaced by the reality of a protracted legal dispute, a battle of paperwork against a faceless corporate entity. The resolution finally, a different kind of envelope arrived. This one was from the finance company's in-house legal department. With trembling hands, Alex opened it. The letter stated that after a full review of the evidence he had provided, they had concluded that he did, in fact, meet the criteria of an innocent purchaser under the Hire Purchase Act. They conceded that he had acquired good title to the vehicle. The letter confirmed, in writing, that they were removing their financial interest from the car's record and would now pursue the original seller directly for the outstanding debt. The relief was overwhelming, a physical weight lifting from his shoulders. He had won. He had stared into the legal abyss and emerged on the other side. He was, finally and unequivocally, the legal owner of the Jaguar XK8. But as the initial wave of relief subsided, it was replaced by a more sober reality. It was a hollow, Pyrrhic victory. Lessons from a nightmare. The aftermath. Alex was now the undisputed legal owner of a beautiful British racing green convertible with a ruined interior, a failing roof, a rotten floor, a shaky suspension, and an engine that sounded like a bag of spanners in a tumble dryer. He was left with the same impossible choice he faced before the letter arrived: pour thousands more pounds, money he didn't have, into fixing a car that would never be worth the total investment, or cut his losses and sell it for parts, accepting a catastrophic financial hit. The win against the finance company had not fixed the car. It had merely confirmed his ownership of a disaster. In the end, he sold the car to a specialist breaker for a fraction of what he paid, a painful but necessary amputation to stop the financial bleeding. The dream was officially over. The power of community throughout the entire ordeal, from the first rattle of the timing chain to the final letter from the lawyers, Alex found one invaluable source of support: the online community of fellow owners. Forums hosted by the Jaguar Enthusiasts Club, JEC, Pistonheads, and Jag Lovers became his university and his therapy. These digital communities, populated by passionate, knowledgeable, and often battle-scarred enthusiasts, provided the crucial information that the seller had concealed and the official service schedule ignored. They explained the difference between MK1 and MK3 tensioners, diagnosed the green shower from a single photo, and offered step-by-step guides to checking for rust. More than that, they offered moral support, reassuring him that he was not the first to fall into this trap and would not be the last. This collective wisdom acts as a vital counterweight to the polished marketing of manufacturers and the deceptive narratives of fraudulent sellers, forming an essential support system for anyone venturing into the world of older, complex cars. The journey Alex took was not just a personal story of a bad purchase, it was a tour through the entire, complex ecosystem that surrounds a problem classic. This ecosystem begins with the manufacturer, Jaguar, who created a desirable but flawed product, complete with optimistic, sealed-for-life service intervals that stored up trouble for the future. This creates a vacuum filled by a secondary market of independent specialists who develop the expertise to fix the known issues, and a vibrant enthusiast community that documents every fault and fix in exhaustive detail. However, this information gap between the knowledgeable community and the naive general public is ruthlessly exploited by a third layer: the dodgy sellers who acquire neglected examples, give them a quick cosmetic polish, and pass them on to unsuspecting dreamers like Alex, misrepresenting their history and condition. When the inevitable legal and financial fallout occurs, as it did with the undisclosed finance, a final layer, the legal and financial system, is forced to intervene and clean up the mess. Alex's story is a case study in navigating this treacherous landscape. He was seduced by the manufacturer's design, fell victim to the dodgy seller, was armed with knowledge by the enthusiast community, and was ultimately forced to fight his way through the legal system. To survive in the world of modern classics, a buyer must understand and engage with every layer of this ecosystem. They must be skeptical of the original marketing, learn from the hard-won wisdom of the community, be deeply wary of sellers, and understand the legal framework that is their only shield. Final recommendations. The story of Alex's Jaguar is a cautionary tale, but it should not deter anyone from the joy of owning a classic car. Instead, it should serve as a powerful lesson in preparation and diligence. For any consumer tempted by the siren song of an affordable classic, the following recommendations are not just advice. They are essential rules for survival. Trust, but verify. Always, a seller's word, a sheaf of old receipts, and even a fresh MOT are not enough. Before any money changes hands, perform a comprehensive vehicle history check, HPI or similar. It is the single best investment you can make. Never take a seller's word that a check has been done. Run your own. Budget for the worst. The purchase price is merely the entry fee to the club. As a rule of thumb, a potential buyer should have a contingency fund of at least 50%, and ideally 100%, of the purchase price ready for immediate preventative maintenance and repairs. If you are buying a £6,000 car, you should have another £3,000 to £6,000 set aside. If this sounds excessive, you cannot afford the car. Become an expert, or hire one. Before you even view a car, spend weeks, not hours, researching its specific weak points. Immerse yourself in the owner's forums. Learn the telltale signs of the common, expensive faults. If you are not confident in your own mechanical knowledge, pay for a pre-purchase inspection from a trusted, independent specialist for that mark. It may cost a few £100s, but it could save you thousands. The paper trail is your shield. Avoid paying with cash. Use a bank transfer or other method that leaves an indelible record. Insist on a detailed, dated receipt that includes the seller's name and address, the vehicle details, the price paid, and any specific claims made about its condition. Save all advertisements and communications. This paperwork is your only defense if you end up in a legal dispute. Embrace the community. Join a reputable owners club before you buy the car. Ask questions, read the buyer's guides, and learn from the collective experience and mistakes of those who have gone before you. Their knowledge is the most powerful tool you have to ensure your classic car dream does not, like Alex's, turn into a waking nightmare.